Hey, Jeff, welcome to the Human Side of Business podcast. How are you making out today?
Thanks, Ange. Thanks for having me. Doing good. Doing good. It's a Friday morning. The sun's out. It's clear. So yeah,
No complaints as of yet. It's still early though, right? No, I'm just
it
joking.
is. It is.
So today's topic is trust and transparency. But before we dive in and get vulnerable, why don't you tell us and tell our friends out there who you are, a little bit about your leadership journey and where you're currently landing as a leader.
My name is Jeff Kelly. I'm the Chief Executive Officer for an organization called the Flower Cart Group in Umanis, Nova Scotia. We're an organization that provides various supported employment, training, and life enhancement opportunities to adults with disabilities and various abilities. I've been the CEO for almost 10 years now, and it's been an experience. I don't want to say it's a unique experience because I'm sure others have shared something similar to the journey that I've gone through to this point, and still where I'm going. But it's certainly because it's a human service organization, and we support adults with varying abilities. It's a very positive environment. Our mission is very much a people-focused mission. So that tends to be the driving factor that gets me out of bed in the morning to keep doing this for 10 years. I'm a consummate Gen Xer. I've changed careers several times through my my working life so far. And this is the longest job I've ever had. So there you go.
That's fantastic background, Jeff. Thanks for enlightening us kind of where you're jumping off from a leadership experiential perspective. So trust and transparency, they're both large topics. What has been your biggest lesson when it comes to trust and transparency in the workplace?
My biggest lesson so far, if I was to take the second word of the topic and throw it to the first, at least in my experience and with the group, the amazing people that I spend my days with, transparency breeds trust. So, that's kind of my guiding direction, I guess. When I started this position, my predecessor had been CEO for 22 years. And he had been with the organization previous to becoming CEO for a stint, had a direct educational and work background in this particular sector, where I worked in a few nonprofits before, but I wasn't directly ever employed in the field providing supports to adults with disabilities. So I walked in brand new to the organization. I was the most junior employee for the first 6 years of my tenure as CEO in the organization. So I had several employees that you were still considered a junior employee if you had about 12 years.
Wow.
Still considered junior. So I come into an organization that didn't have a lot of turnover. I came into a workplace that wasn't used to a lot of change in general, and certainly no change in its senior leadership. So right off the get-go, I found myself, issues of trust and getting to know the new guy, right? Who just happens to be the CEO. And in typical, typical CEO or senior leadership fashions, come in with ideas about change. I'm looking back now because there's been some retirements since then. 3 out of the 5 had almost 30 years into each in the organization.
Wow.
So collectively, you're looking at about a century's worth of collective experience
and knowledge. Yeah.
And I'm kind of a generational, like I like demographics and studying the different generations. So they were all baby boomers, and here's this Gen X kid coming in, and they were all older than I was. And here's this kid coming in to be the boss now, right? So but they were a stellar, fantastic group of people. If I was to go back to your original question, I would say, um, you know, open communication right from the get-go is what I started with everybody.
Mm-hmm.
I had a policy with my office, and this applied to the folks that we support, that we call clients and or participants, right up to my most senior staff person. And that is, if my office door was open, then I'm interruptible for anything.
Mm-hmm.
If it was closed, I was in a meeting or on the phone, and just asked everybody to respect that. So I really, people needed to get to know me just as much as I needed to get to know everybody else. So needed to create those opportunities that people felt safe and welcome to come and talk to me and engage with me.
There's a lot that you've said that is piquing my interest. So I really like your approach to getting to know me integration. So there's still boundaries, right? Because
Mhm.
oftentimes what you hear from leaders is, yes, I always have an open door policy. And that can be disheartening to some employees when they see that your door is closed half the time, right?
Yeah.
Because the realistic approach of things is that you do have to close your door sometimes to have confidential conversations, just to have some space to focus, as well as continue to lead the organization. So really appreciating your thought process around, hey, when my door is open, please come in, get to know me, interrupt me. That is an authentic approach to transparency, which I'm sure helped you along the way with trust. The other thing that was coming up for me was going way back in your comments, Jeff. You had said transparency breeds trust. Tell us more about your definition of that, and maybe a quick anecdotal story behind it.
It's something that, to be quite honest, Ange, I still work on, because I
I get you. It is
I
something.
get thoughts in my head, and I get directions, and I'm thinking about different approaches to do things, or um, taking certain departments in different directions, or all within our purpose statement in mind, right?
Mm-hmm.
As my guiding that I get from my board of directors. But being completely transparent with those ideas to especially my senior leadership and all my staff, to bring ideas to them early and be completely honest with them that I do accept constructive feedback on this.
Mm-hmm.
Where are you
Mm-hmm.
guys thinking? But at the same time, I lay the foundation. For example, transitioning a lot of our enterprises into real waged employment is something that is one of my key
You've been
drives
very passionate
since
about that.
since
Yeah.
I've been here. And a lot of my senior staff, that's not something that they were really, it wasn't a lens that they applied front and center for a
Right.
lot of the operations through years.
Right.
Some of my newer staff, because I did have a lot of retirements, especially during the early days of the pandemic period,
Mm-hmm.
are more open to figuring ways to make that happen. So, if I was to share a story, one of my early days, an opportunity came up with a local business not too far from us. And I wanted the work training experiences to be compensated,
Mm-hmm.
participants to be compensated. And
Mm-hmm.
I basically said, guys, we're going to do this. We're going to do this. Let's make it happen. Let's put ideas out on the table. And they, to the credit of my team at the time, I think it was well understood that this was a line in the sand for me. I wasn't going to back down from this. So, but at the same time, I was looking to them to say, you guys are the experts in delivering this. How are we going to make this work?
Mm-hmm.
And they rose to the occasion. And to their credit, it's not like we couldn't figure it out as a group,
Right.
include participants within it, but it just wasn't their go-to mindset from the beginning. So they just
Mm-hmm.
weren't used to it.
Right.
So I was quite open with them, say, you gang, these opportunities that are coming up, if it's related to employment and vocational type of tasks,
Mm-hmm.
yes, there can be training elements to it, but I want compensation to be attached to it for the people that are going out and doing this.
Right.
So that kind of lens is something we put front and center now whenever we get approached by a business to provide individuals or work teams or within our supported employment services division. So I wouldn't say it didn't meet with any resistance. There was some resistance, but it was
Mm-hmm.
more clarity around, and they really forced me to articulate what this vision I have is.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But they were open to hearing it, right? So it
Mm-hmm.
wasn't completely, nope, not do that doesn't work, can't do that. That's not doing that. We're not
Right.
doing that
Right.
type of thing. So, but full transparency, we know each other. So I'm not a very confrontational person, and certainly not intimidating as a boss per se. So I think that's one of the things I don't see that as a weakness. I see that as a strength if I play it as a strength.
Very much so, because I hear you in the sense that you're utilizing that from a place of authenticity. Like you're using that from a place of positive, what I call positive vulnerability, right? So you're
Mhm.
saying, hey, I have a thought that I really want to put out here. You're my subject matter expertise. Let's problem solve this. We're in this together, essentially, is what I'm hearing. And based on that transparency and that continued effort that you've put in over time, Jeff, is what I'm hearing is you've built strong trust across the team, especially your management group.
One thing, like with any relationships in general,
For
whether those are
sure.
work or personal, trust is so hard to earn, and it can be so easily lost,
Mm-hmm.
so quickly lost, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I throughout this 10 years, I'm guilty of sometimes if I could go back and do a few things differently, I absolutely would. But
We all
that's
would. We all would.
yeah, exactly,
I
right. So
and it's funny, Jeff, because when I hear you speak, it's like you found your how to transparency minimally. And what I'm sensing is that based on your organization, based on the temperature of your culture, you know how much to be transparent and with whom. And I think that's a really, because I don't feel like there's a one size fits all in organizations, period. You have your baseline, you want to be ethical and consistent, common sense applies, all that great stuff. But it's so funny that you say that, because I just had the epiphany, and I haven't thought about this for some time, but in my early 20s, I thought transparency was you let everything hang out on the table. If you're upset,
no,
you let it hang out. If you're overly excited, you let it hang out. If you're
yeah.
frustrated or angry with something, you let it hang out. And so I find with professional maturity, and as you elevate as a leader, you're figuring out yourself first from a level of transparency and a level of trust that you want within your organization. And then you also hear your people and adapt the same. And so when I think about us here at Intuitive Performance, my level of transparency and trust with my business partner is slightly different than my consultants. I don't value him more than others. I don't treat him differently. I don't hide anything from anybody else, but it's just the nature of the business and our relationships, right?
Mhm.
And so for my business partner and I, we've actually set out agreements with each other, because you know what it's like. You can have difficult conversations, or what feels sticky in some circumstances. You may have passionate debates. Scott, my business partner, and I, we have almost like a brother sisterly love kind of going on there, right? So we've been able to look at things from a place of curiosity. And
Mhm.
I think once we flip that switch to going from an actual debate, which is what we've been brought up or brought into the workplace to understand or negotiate, once we move from that track to curiosity and problem solving, the whole vibe between us have shifted. So now we can come into conversations and and we make a joke. I love Brene Brown. So for those of you who are Brene Brown fans, for those who don't, she's amazing, an amazing researcher out of U Texas on vulnerability, guilt, shame. And she's published many books that you should check out. But aside from that, we've taken kind of a page of her book to say, ready to rumble. So what that means is that when you get in the arena, you're showing your raw, vulnerable self and coming from a place of problem solving, essentially. So now we have a joke. And if we're talking about strategic planning and we hit a wall, then Scott may say, or I may say, are you ready to rumble? And, it kind of lightens the mood to
Right.
identify that, we're going to be really transparent here, but we trust at the end of the day that we're coming out, or we're coming at this from a place of GG, greater good, right? And I think it's so important in leadership when it comes to transparency and trust, that those are things that we have a responsibility and an opportunity to build upon day by day, but also being able to adapt to what people need. Because you may need a different level of transparency and trust from me than someone else may need, right? So I think there's this
Mhm.
other attunement that leaders need to really understand, that there's a lot of factors that come into this place called trust. There obviously there's many books. Covey's a big author on trust based leadership. And I think when it comes down to it, there's things like empathy and humility and authenticity, and they're great buzzwords. But as leaders, I feel like we have the responsibility to really understand what they mean to us and how we're going to be able to translate them across our organization for our team members.
Mhm. Mhm.
Yeah.
When I took over here, I was in my early 40s, and it was my first overall senior leadership role.
Mm,
I'd had leadership positions in other organizations, but I was the director at the time. And just doing a check on your own energy and enthusiasm, which is
mm,
crucial to have, but at the same time, that ability to understand when it's appropriate to overshare, or
mm.
when you do overshare, maybe that wasn't such a great idea, right?
Can we just back out of this one, please?
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah. Definitely, for sure. And so, Jeff, for our listeners, from your seat in leadership, if there's anything that you could tell them about the transparency/trust journey, what would you want them to hear?
Um, Being transparent means you have to come from a place of vulnerability. Because for me, being transparent means being open to hear um, yeah, both support and some criticism of,
Hmm.
of what it is. I'm talking about in the context of new ideas, new directions, and change,
Yes,
essentially, and
yes, fair.
especially in a change management environment, which I still find myself in, because you can't come into an organization who's had a senior leader for over 2 decades and still not be in change management. Coupled with that, we've been in a campaign to build a new facility and augment some of our program offerings, and a change in overall vision for the organization. So
Hmm.
um,
Hmm.
being transparent means the openness to be vulnerable, and that vulnerability be shown.
Hmm.
And
Agree.
maybe it's because I work in a human service sector. Um, Generally, most people that are drawn to work in this field are empathetic people by nature.
Yes,
Service is one of their primary
I,
objectives,
I tend to agree.
and so they're a little more open to that kind of leadership style, I
Hmm.
guess.
Hmm.
Because if you're a command and control leader, certainly vulnerability. I don't know. I can't think of it, but like maybe the military or something be detrimental to your organization and its objectives that it wants to achieve, because those that are following you need you to be that rock type of thing,
Hmm.
right?
Hmm.
And vulnerability doesn't necessarily mean over emotional or a sappy mess type of thing, but to me it just
It
means,
happens, but I
yeah,
understand you.
yeah. To me it means being open to hearing from your team,
Most
from the team
definitely.
members.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. We had a recent example, and I didn't, to be totally honest, I didn't even realize that we were doing it. So with our clients, we speak about culture playbooks, we speak about vulnerability, we speak about and we offer a lot of coaching services from an executive coaching perspective. So this is the stuff we jam on a daily basis. And we were sitting around the table, so it was a all hands operational meeting, and we were talking about social media and how to get ourselves out there. I got called out in the middle of the meeting with regards to social media, and not being as present as I can be on video, for multiple reasons. One, you have to be vulnerable to be out there. And two, just the nature of our operations right now, as we're scaling and growing, it can be quite challenging to balance that time. Anyways, all this to say is I did a video, I put it out there, and one of our consultants had said, this seems like a lot, like there's a lot jam-packed in this video. And of course, he meant it from a place of love, but constructive criticism. And so I went to the team, and we were talking about this video, and the team was like, sorry, I didn't catch that, or maybe one or two people didn't see it or something like that. And so I said, well, let's pull it up. Let's look at it. And I didn't even think about it, that I was being super vulnerable to sit in front of my team, have them watch the video and then critique it. And so afterwards we were sitting back, and one of the team members looked at me and they were just like, Ange, like, wow, like what an expression of vulnerability. Like you just kind of sat there with grace and accepted the feedback that we had, and asked more questions. Because for me, when I start to look at being vulnerable, to your point, Jeff, I think you painted the picture great to say, you have an idea or you have a concept or you're putting something out there, but you have really smart people around you to help support it, to help make it better. Because for me, when I do videos, and just using this small example, when I do videos, I'm not doing it for myself. I want to get really great at doing videos from a social media perspective so people can see what we have to offer them, the gifts that we can give them, essentially, right? So it's not about me looking good, but rather me supporting Intuity and growing its brand based on our core values.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. The time has flown by, Jeff. Thank you so much for being here.
Well, thanks for having me. I really, really enjoyed this. This was a lot of fun, and had some epiphanies myself doing this. As self-reflection can often, bring you, I think, which is why I'm a big supporter of it. And, looking back and thinking ahead at the same time.
Exactly. Enjoy the rest of your day, and to our subscribership, take good care.